Valery Vasilyevich, good afternoon.
Good health to you, Comrade Supreme Commander-in-Chief.
Valery Vasilyevich, I know that you have information on the latest events in the Kursk direction. What are the results of combat operations over the past 24 hours and for the entire previous period?
Comrade Supreme Commander-in-Chief, today the last populated area in the Kursk region, the village of Gornal, has been liberated from Ukrainian units. In this regard, the units of the 22nd Motorized Rifle Regiment of the 72nd Division, the 810th and 40th Separate Marine Brigades, the 177th Separate Marine Regiment, and the 1427th Motorized Rifle Regiment distinguished themselves. Thus, the defeat of the armed formations, the armed forces of Ukraine, that invaded the Kursk region has been completed. The plans of the Kyiv regime to create a so-called strategic bridgehead and disrupt our offensive in Donbass failed. At the initial stage of the operation, the enemy's advance into our territory was stopped. With the subsequent reduction in the area of penetration, Ukrainian units were forced to go on the defensive. Subsequently, by counterattacks from the flanks along the state border by two airborne divisions, the 76th and 106th, as well as by the actions of the 155th and 810th Marine Brigades, the main group of the Ukrainian armed forces was isolated and subsequently cut up and destroyed piecemeal. The most active phase of the operation began on March 6th of this year. As a result of the offensive actions of the Kursk grouping units and military units simultaneously in all directions, as well as a breakthrough into the enemy's rear by underground landing forces, consisting of the veteran volunteer formation, personnel of the 11th Airborne Assault Brigade, the 30th Rifle Regiment, and the Akhmat Special Forces Unit through the gas transportation system pipeline, the defense of the Ukrainian armed forces collapsed. A chaotic retreat of Ukrainian units began, and within 5 days the area of the penetration had decreased by 2.5 times. During further actions, the few remaining Ukrainian elite units were routed and driven out of the territory of Kursk Oblast. During the operation, the enemy suffered significant losses. In order to maintain the strength of its group at the level of about 60,000 people, it was forced to constantly transfer reserves and units from other areas to the Kursk direction. The total losses of the formation of the armed forces of Ukraine amounted to more than 76,000 servicemen killed and wounded. In fact, one composition of the initial enemy group and even more were knocked out. Over 7,700 units of military equipment were destroyed, including 412 tanks, 340 infantry fighting vehicles, 314 armored personnel carriers, and about 2,300 other armored combat vehicles. I would like to separately note the participation of servicemen of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea in the liberation of the border areas of the Kursk region, who, in accordance with the Treaty on Comprehensive Strategic Partnership between our countries, provided significant assistance in defeating the wedge group of the Ukrainian armed forces, soldiers and officers of the Korean People's Army, performing combat missions shoulder to shoulder with Russian servicemen, demonstrated high professionalism, showed fortitude, courage, and heroism in battle during the repulse of the Ukrainian invasion. Comrade Supreme Commander, currently in the liberated areas of the Kursk region, measures are being taken to identify individual servicemen of the armed forces of Ukraine who are trying to hide on Russian territory. Forest areas, basements, and abandoned buildings are being checked. Local authorities are being assisted in restoring peaceful life. Engineering units of the Sever Group and the International Anti-Mine Center of the Military Engineering Academy are conducting complete demining of the territory and destruction of explosive objects. 19 populated areas have been completely checked and cleared. 110 demining groups, more than 1,000 people in personnel are involved in these works. In accordance with your instructions, the creation of a security zone in the border areas of the Sumy region of Ukraine continues. 4 settlements have been liberated. The total area of the controlled territory is more than 90 square kilometers. In addition, in the Belgorod region, units of the Sever Group have completed the destruction of Ukrainian sabotage groups in the area of the settlement of Popovka. A search is underway for and the elimination of individual servicemen of the armed forces of Ukraine hiding in the border forest belts. In other areas, the joint group of the armed forces of Ukraine continues to carry out tasks in accordance with the plan of the special military operation.
The 234th Airborne Regiment of this division, the 237th Airborne Regiment, and the 104th Airborne Regiment of this division. The 106th Airborne Division and its 119th Parachute Regiment, the 137th Parachute Regiment and the 51st Parachute Regiment are the 56th Airborne Regiment of the 7th Airborne Regiment. The 204th Airborne Regiment and the 1434th Airborne Regiment, the 22nd Airborne Regiment of the 72nd Airborne Division, the 11th Parachute Regiment, and the 83rd Parachute Regiment, and, finally, our Navy, the glorious Navy, the 155th Navy Brigade of the Pacific Fleet, the 810th Navy Brigade of the Black Sea Fleet, and, of course, as you have just said, the voluntary formation of veterans who carried out a daring landing in the Sudzha region and created conditions for its complete liberation. I congratulate the entire personnel of all military units that took part in the defeat of the neo-Nazi formations that invaded Russian territory in the Kursk region. The Kiev regime's adventure has completely failed, and the huge losses suffered by the enemy, including among the most combat-ready, prepared and equipped, including the Western samples of the Navy, the assault units of the Special Forces, will certainly affect the entire line of combat. The complete defeat of the enemy in the Kursk border creates conditions for further successful actions of our troops and on other important sections of the front, and brings the defeat of the neo-Nazi regime closer. I congratulate the entire personnel of all soldiers and commanders on this success, on the victory. I thank you for your courage, heroism, for serving our fatherland and the people of Russia. Thank you.